She replaced her sick sister at the Café. The man at table 3 turned out to be the CEO. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. The morning rush at Willow Street Café was already in full swing when Mia Harper slipped through the back door, tying her apron with trembling hands. The aroma of roasted coffee beans filled the air, mixing with the sharp hiss of the espresso machine and the murmur of early customers. She wasn't supposed to be here, at least not today. Her sister Lily was the barista, but a sudden fever had knocked her out, and Mia had volunteered to cover the morning shift. She'd never worked a café before, but she'd promised, "Just today, Lil. I'll manage somehow." The bell over the front door chimed, and the manager's voice cut through the air. "Mia, table 3's waiting, double espresso and a black coffee, no sugar." Her heart skipped. Table 3. She grabbed the tray, balancing the cups carefully as she walked out to the main floor. The café was small but charming, sunlight spilling across wooden tables and hanging ferns swaying from the ceiling. At table 3 sat a man in a charcoal suit, posture straight, eyes focused on the tablet in front of him. He looked like he belonged in a corner office, not a corner café. "Good morning, sir," she said, setting down the drinks with a nervous smile. "Your espresso and black coffee, no sugar." He looked up, his gaze sharp but calm, and for a moment she forgot how to breathe. "Thank you," he said simply, voice low, smooth like the coffee he drank. "Are you new here?" Mia nodded quickly. "Just helping out my sister today." "I see." He studied her for a second longer than felt normal, then returned to his screen. She turned to leave, but his next words stopped her. "You forgot the napkin." "Oh, right, sorry." She spun back, cheeks flushed, grabbing a napkin from the counter and nearly bumping into a customer on the way. The man's mouth twitched in what might have been a smile. When she placed it down, he said, "Don't worry. First days are always a mess." "Tell me about it," she whispered, half to herself. "You're doing fine," he said, and somehow those 3 words felt heavier than they should. As she retreated to the counter, her coworker whispered, "That's him, right? The guy who owns the tech building across the street." Mia frowned. "The CEO? Yeah, Ethan Cole. He comes here every morning." Her stomach dropped. She glanced back. He was already sipping his coffee, calm, unreadable. For the rest of the shift, she tried not to look his way, but every time she wiped a table or refilled a cup, she could feel his presence like static in the air. When he finally stood to leave, she let out a quiet breath of relief until he paused at the door, turned slightly, and said, "Tell your sister she's lucky to have you." The door closed behind him, bell chiming softly. Mia stood frozen, tray still in her hands, a strange warmth blooming in her chest. She didn't know that the man at table 3 wasn't just any customer, he was the CEO of Cole Group, and that one small mistake of replacing her sister would change her life forever. The next morning, the air at Willow Street Café smelled of rain and roasted beans again. Mia showed up early, her hands still sore from yesterday's rush. She told herself she would only help out until Lily recovered, then return to her normal routine at the art supply store. But something about yesterday kept replaying in her head: the man at table 3, his calm voice, the way he had said, "You're doing fine." It had been a long time since anyone told her that. She tied her apron, brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, and started her shift. Halfway through the morning, the door chimed again. Her heart skipped when she saw him. Ethan Cole walked in, same tailored suit, same composed look, yet his eyes carried a quiet warmth when they landed on her. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning, sir. The usual?" she asked, forcing her voice steady. "Actually," he said, glancing at the corner table, "surprise me today." That threw her off, but she smiled anyway. "All right, one surprise coming up." She turned toward the espresso machine, thinking, what do you serve a man like that? She decided on something simple, a caramel cappuccino, light foam, a touch of cinnamon. When she placed the cup before him, he studied it like a piece of art. "You made this?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Do not worry, I followed the recipe." "I was not worried," he said with a faint smile, then took a sip. "It is perfect." She blushed, mumbling, "Beginner's luck." "Or maybe talent," he said, meeting her eyes. The words lingered longer than they should have. The café was quieter than usual, the hum of conversation fading into soft jazz. For the first time, Mia found herself talking to him beyond polite greetings. He asked what she did outside the café, and she told him about sketching interior layouts, how she loved spaces that made people feel safe. "I always thought a good design is not about beauty," she said, "but about comfort, when a place feels honest." Ethan nodded, intrigued. "Honest," he repeated. "That is not a word I hear often in business." "Maybe you should," she replied, then gasped, realizing she had just spoken to a millionaire like he was a friend. But he only laughed quietly. "Maybe I should," he agreed. For a moment, they both forgot the gap between them, the suits and aprons, the worlds they came from. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression changing. "I have to go," he said, standing up. "Thank you for the coffee, Mia." The sound of her name on his lips startled her. "You remembered my name," she said. "Of course. You remembered my order." Then he left, the bell chiming again as the door closed behind him. The rest of the day blurred by. Customers came and went, but her mind stayed at table 3. That evening, when she returned home to their small apartment, Lily was sitting up in bed with soup and a blanket. "So," Lily teased, "how was your big day as a barista?" "Messy," Mia said, dropping onto the couch. "I spilled sugar, forgot napkins, and maybe made coffee for a CEO. A what?" "Never mind," Mia muttered, but she was smiling. Later that night, she opened her sketchbook. Between drawings of calf corners and light fixtures, she added something new: a man in a suit sitting at table 3, a faint smile on his face. She titled it, "The Stranger Who Said I Was Doing Fine." Then she closed the book and whispered, "Thank you, whoever you are." She did not know that at that very moment, Ethan was in his car outside the café, scrolling through an email from his assistant that read, "Cole Group's new property acquisition, Willow Street Café. Contract closing next week." He stared at the screen, then looked up at the quiet glow of the café window, his reflection merging with the light inside. For the first time in months, the idea of a business deal felt personal. Over the next few days, Willow Street Café settled back into its usual rhythm. But for Mia, nothing felt quite the same. Each time the bell above the door chimed, her heart leaped before she could stop it. But Ethan did not return. She tried to tell herself it was just a fleeting encounter, a kind stranger who happened to like her coffee, yet every morning she caught herself glancing at table 3. Her sister was getting better now, ready to come back to work, and Mia promised herself she would go back to her real job soon. Still, she could not shake the strange warmth that lingered every time she thought of him. On Friday, as she was wiping down the counter, the manager approached with a clipboard. "Mia, since you have been helping us all week, I need one more favor. There is a small renovation survey tomorrow. The new owners want to understand the staff experience." "You are good with people, right?" Mia froze. "New owners?" The manager nodded. "Some company bought the café. The deal just went through. Representatives will come by in the morning." That night, Mia could barely sleep. She thought about what new owners meant: new rules, new faces, maybe even losing the cozy charm the café had. Early the next morning, she arrived before everyone else, arranging the chairs and making sure every table shined. Around 9 o'clock, the door opened, and the world seemed to tilt. Ethan Cole stepped in, not in his usual suit, but a gray sweater and dark jeans. He looked ordinary, almost approachable, but there was no mistaking who he was. For a heartbeat, they just stared at each other. "Good morning," he said. "I hope I am not too early." Her voice caught. You are the new owner?" "Partly," he said. "Cole Group recently invested in several community cafés. I wanted to see this one myself." She blinked, unsure whether to smile or panic. "So when you came here before—" "I was scouting," he admitted. "But I did not expect to find someone who could make coffee better than half the baristas in Manhattan." She tried to laugh, but it came out shaky. "You could have told me." "Would you have treated me the same?" he asked quietly. The question silenced her. He walked closer, resting a hand on the counter. "I liked being just another customer for once. And I liked thinking I could talk to someone like you without a script," she whispered. For a moment, neither spoke. Then the manager bustled in, breaking the quiet. "Mr. Cole, welcome. The staff is ready for the walkthrough." Mia stepped aside as Ethan followed the manager, though his gaze lingered on her for a second longer before turning away. The morning stretched endlessly. She served customers, answered questions, pretended not to notice him discussing layout plans near the window. But when she reached for a stack of cups, her sketchbook slipped from her apron and hit the floor, pages spilling open. Ethan bent down first. His hand brushed the paper before she could grab it. He paused, his eyes tracing a familiar drawing, a man sitting at table 3 with the words beneath. "The stranger who said I was doing fine." She felt her face burn. "It is just something I draw to remember people who make an impression," she stammered. He looked at her for a long moment, then closed the sketchbook gently and handed it back. "I am glad I did," he said. "Because you made one on me too." Before she could reply, someone called his name from across the room, pulling him away again. As he left later that day, he stopped by the door and said softly, "Keep that book safe, Mia. Some drawings belong in galleries, not aprons." She watched him go, heart pounding, torn between disbelief and hope. For the first time in years, she felt seen not as a worker or a mistake, but as someone who mattered. For the next 2 weeks, the café buzzed with quiet anticipation. Word had spread that the new ownership was planning a renovation, but Mia noticed how Ethan kept returning, never in a rush, always choosing table 3. Sometimes he brought a laptop, other times just a notebook, yet every visit ended the same way: he left a generous tip and a small smile meant only for her. One afternoon, while Lily worked the espresso machine, Ethan called Mia over. "Do you have a minute?" he asked, his tone polite but earnest. She wiped her hands on her apron and nodded. Of course. He slid a portfolio across the table. Inside were sketches, blueprints, and concept art, modern, sleek, a little too polished for the café she knew. "These are the current renovation plans," he said. "But I think we are missing something. I want this place to keep its soul. You seem to understand that." She looked up, startled. "You are asking me?" "That is rare in design and even rarer in business." She hesitated. "I am not a professional. I just draw for myself. That is exactly why I am asking. You see what others overlook." His voice was calm, but there was conviction behind it. Against her better judgment, she took the folder home. That night, she sat on her bed, surrounded by pencils and coffee cups, sketching her heart out. She reimagined the café not as a brand, but as a refuge, a place where tired souls could breathe again. When she finished, dawn was breaking through the curtains. The next morning, she found Ethan already waiting at table 3, a faint smirk playing at his lips when he saw the folder in her hands. "You stayed up all night, did you not?" "Maybe," she admitted, sliding her designs across the table. He opened the folder, and for a long moment, the only sound was the clinking of cups around them. His eyes scanned each page carefully, tracing her pencil lines as though they were secrets. "Mia," he said at last, "this is beautiful." She smiled, shy but proud. "It is what the café feels like to me." He nodded. "Then it is exactly what it should feel like to everyone." She laughed softly. "You really are trusting a random waitress with your renovation?" "I am trusting the person who reminds me what sincerity looks like." The way he said it made her chest tighten. Before she could answer, the manager called for her from behind the counter. She turned to go, but Ethan's voice stopped her again. "Would you have dinner with me tonight?" "To discuss the project, of course." She blinked, caught off guard. "Dinner?" "Yes," he said, trying and failing to hide his smile. "Strictly professional." That evening, they met at a quiet bistro, tucked between old brownstones. The place smelled of fresh basil and rain. They talked for hours, not about profits or renovations, but about childhood dreams, failures, and the strange loneliness that success never seemed to fix. At one point, Ethan confessed, "I built an empire to prove something to people who stopped caring long ago. But lately, I have been wondering what it is all for." She listened, really listened, and said softly, "Maybe it is for something you have not found yet." He looked at her then, eyes softening. "Maybe I just did." Time slipped away unnoticed. When he finally walked her home, the city lights flickered like a heartbeat. At the apartment door, she turned to him. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For seeing more than what people expect." "I could say the same to you," he replied. Their eyes held for a breath too long before he stepped back. "Good night, Mia." "Good night, Ethan." When she closed the door behind her, her heart was racing. On the other side of town, Ethan sat in his car, staring at her sketches on the passenger seat. Somewhere between those pencil lines and her quiet laughter, He had found something he did not know he was missing. Days turned into weeks, and the renovation project became their shared rhythm. Ethan started dropping by the cafe almost every afternoon, no longer as the distant CEO but as someone who seemed to belong there. He would roll up his sleeves, help move chairs, taste test new pastries, and sometimes sit with Mia for hours discussing textures, lighting, and the feeling of home. The staff grew used to seeing them together, and whispers began floating around, some teasing, some curious. Mia tried to ignore them, telling herself this was purely professional. Yet each time Ethan looked at her, there was a softness that made her forget how different their worlds were. One rainy evening, they stayed late after closing to review color samples. The cafe smelled of paint and fresh coffee, and the only light came from the glow of the pendant lamps above the counter. Mia held up 2 swatches. "What do you think? Warm cream or light oak?" "Whichever feels more honest," he said, his tone thoughtful. She laughed. "That is not how design works. It is how life works," he replied, and their eyes met. For a moment, the noise of the world fell away. Then thunder rumbled outside, snapping her back. "I should lock up," she murmured, flustered. "Of course," he said, but his voice had softened. When she turned the key, the lights flickered, and she froze. "Power outage," she whispered. "Stay here," Ethan said, pulling his phone flashlight on. The beam lit the cafe in silver tones, and in that half-light, he looked differentless, like a CEO, more like a man quietly carrying his own storms. He found candles behind the counter, and soon the place glowed in flickering amber. "You know," he said as he set one down, "I used to think success meant never having to slow down. Now I think slowing down might be the only real success." Mia smiled. "Maybe you just needed the right reason to stop." He looked at her then, eyes steady. "Maybe I did." The silence that followed was gentle, almost fragile. Outside, the rain softened into a drizzle, tapping against the windows like a lullaby. Ethan took a slow breath. "When this cafe reopens, I want it to be a place that reminds people what sincerity feels like. You helped me remember that." "You give me too much credit," she said quietly. "No, Mia. I have spent years surrounded by people who tell me what I want to hear. You tell me what I need to hear." Her heart pounded. She wanted to say something, but words slipped away. Instead, she opened her sketchbook and flipped to a page in early concept she had never shown him. It was a drawing of the cafe, filled with laughter and light, but near the window sat a small caption in pencil, "A place that feels like being seen." He read it silently, then looked up. "That is exactly what this place will be." They packed up when the storm passed, walking outside under a single umbrella. The city glistened with puddles reflecting the streetlights. When they reached her apartment, she turned to him. "Be careful driving home." "Always," he said. "Thank you for staying late." "Thank you for trusting me," she replied. He hesitated, then smiled faintly. "I am starting to think trusting you was the easiest decision I have made in years." She stood there long after his car disappeared down the street, her heart caught between fear and hope. Inside his car, Ethan exhaled, realizing the truth he had been avoiding. This was no longer about a cafe. Somewhere between sketches and candlelight, he had fallen for her. And though he was a man who had built his life on contracts and control, he suddenly found himself longing for something that could not be negotiated. The weeks that followed felt almost like a dream. The renovation of Willow Street Cafe moved into its final stage, and every detail carried a piece of Mia's imagination. Ethan insisted on involving her in every decision, from the placement of the lights to the texture of the chairs. To the rest of the world, it looked like a partnership built on creativity, but for both of them, it had quietly become something deeper. They never said it out loud, but it was there in the way he watched her when she laughed, or the way she lingered near table 3, even when it was empty. One crisp morning, just as the autumn breeze began to cool the city, Ethan invited Mia to the Cole Group headquarters. "It is nothing formal," he said, "just a small meeting with the design board. I want them to see who brought the cafe to life." Mia nearly refused. She did not belong in glass towers and boardrooms filled with polished suits. But Ethan's voice was gentle. "You deserve to be there. You earned it." So she went. The elevator ride felt endless, her reflection staring back from mirrored walls. When the doors opened, she stepped into a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline. A dozen executives waited, all sleek and composed. Ethan introduced her simply. "This is Mia Harper, the creative consultant behind Willow Street Cafe's new vision." The room was silent for a heartbeat, then filled with polite nods. As the meeting began, Ethan presented her sketches, giving her full credit. But halfway through, one of the board members, an older man with sharp eyes, leaned forward. "Mr. Cole," he said, with respect, "is it wise to base an entire redesign on someone without formal qualifications?" The room tensed. Mia's stomach dropped. Ethan's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, she spoke softly. "He is right. I am not qualified. I am just someone who loves that cafe enough to want people to feel at home in it." There was silence again, but then another executive smiled. "Maybe that is exactly what we need," she said. The tension broke, and Ethan looked at Mia with quiet pride. After the meeting, they walked together through the lobby, the city lights spilling over marble floors. "You handled that better than I ever could," he said. She laughed nervously. "My legs were shaking the whole time." "No one noticed," he said, and then added softly, "I did, but only because I was watching you." Her cheeks warmed. "You cannot say things like that in your own building, Mr. Cole." He smiled. "Then maybe I should step outside." Later that evening, they found themselves back at the cafe, now nearly complete. The new sign gleamed softly above the door. Willow Street Cafe, reimagined by Cole Group. Inside, the air smelled of fresh paint and hope. Mia ran her fingers along the counter, now smooth and golden under the lights. "It feels different," she said, "but still the same." "Because you made it that way," Ethan replied. She turned to face him. "You know, when I first replaced my sister that day, I thought I was just helping for one shift. I never thought it would lead to this." "Neither did I," he admitted. "But I am glad it did." The distance between them felt thinner now, fragile but real. For a moment it seemed like he might reach for her hand, but before he could, the manager walked in to check final invoices. The moment broke, replaced by polite professionalism once more. Still, as Mia left that night, Ethan stood by the window watching her disappear into the city lights. For all his power, he had never felt so uncertain. The cafe was ready to open, but for the first time in his life, he was not thinking about profits or prestige. He was thinking about a girl who drew hope in pencil lines and wondering if she might draw a place for him too. The grand reopening of Willow Street Cafe arrived on a bright Saturday morning. A gentle breeze carried the smell of cinnamon and fresh bread through the air, and a small crowd gathered outside, eager to see the transformation. Mia stood near the entrance in a soft cream dress, her hands clasped tightly as the ribbon stretched across the doorway. Ethan appeared beside her, dressed in a simple gray suit, far less formal than usual. "You ready?" he asked quietly. She smiled nervously. "As I will ever be." Cameras flashed as they cut the ribbon together, applause echoing down the street. When the doors opened, people poured in, marveling at the warm lights, wooden textures, and hand-drawn art that lined the walls. Her art. Mia watched as laughter and conversation filled the space, exactly as she had imagined. Ethan leaned in and whispered, "You did this." "We did this," she corrected. The day was a blur of greetings and handshakes, but beneath the excitement, something in Ethan's demeanor had changed. He smiled for the crowd, but his eyes seemed distant. As the event drew to a close, he disappeared to take a call outside. When he returned, his expression was tight, his phone still in his hand. "Everything all right?" Mia asked softly. He hesitated. "It is fine, just business." But it was not fine. The next day, articles began appearing online. Cole Group CEO under fire for nepotism in CAF project. Pictures of Ethan and Mia at the CAF circulated, twisted with headlines that accused him of favoritism and poor judgment. Mia's heart sank as she read them. By afternoon, paparazzi had shown up near the CAF. Customers whispered. Staff avoided eye contact. She felt exposed, like every good thing had turned into a scandal overnight. When Ethan walked in, the room fell silent. He looked at her, his usual calm replaced by something unreadable. "We need to talk," he said quietly, and they stepped into the office at the back. "The board is furious," he began. "They think our connection compromised the project. They are demanding I step back from it." She stared at him, confused and hurt. "Our connection? You mean my work?" "No, Mia," he said, his voice softening. "Your work is brilliant. But they see the photos, the dinners, the time we spent together. They think it was personal." Her throat tightened. "Was it not?" The words slipped out before she could stop them. Ethan froze. "Mia, I'll not even say it," she whispered. "You told me you wanted honesty, but you are hiding again." "I am trying to protect you," he said firmly. From what? From the truth? She shot back, tears burning her eyes. If you are ashamed of me, just say it. I am not ashamed, he said, stepping closer. I am terrified, because everything I built could fall apart, and for the first time I am not sure I care. The confession hung in the air, raw and desperate, but it came too late. Mia shook her head, her voice trembling. Maybe you should care, Ethan, because I cannot be another secret you keep. She pushed past him, leaving the office before he could say another word. That night, she packed her sketchbook, her apron, and a few photos from the caf. She left a note on the counter. Thank you for letting me believe I belonged here. By morning, she was gone. Ethan arrived to find the caf empty, except for the folded note and a pencil lying on table 3, the same pencil she had used to draw her first design. He picked it up, gripping it tightly, his reflection in the caf window fractured by sunlight. For a man who once had everything, he had never felt the weight of loss until now. For several weeks after Mia left, Willow Street Caf stood as a silent reminder of what had been lost. The laughter that once filled the space was replaced by quiet background music and polite conversations that never lingered. Ethan visited every morning but never stayed long. He would sit at table 3, order the same coffee she used to make, and stare at the empty seat across from him. The board scandal eventually faded, as corporate news always did, but what remained was the emptiness he could not explain away. Every success suddenly felt hollow. One rainy evening, Ethan found himself walking without purpose, his coat soaked, the city lights blurring through the drizzle. He stopped in front of a small art studio on a side street he had never noticed before. The sign read, Harper Designs. Inside, through the fogged glass, he saw her. Mia stood by a display window, arranging framed sketches hers, unmistakably hers. His heart stuttered. For a moment, he just watched. She looked peaceful, focused, her hair tied loosely as she adjusted a drawing of the caf's interior. It looked almost identical to the one she had drawn for him months ago, except for one detail. In the window sketch, 2 figures sat across from each other at table 3. He stepped inside before he could talk himself out of it. The soft chime of the door made her turn. For a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. Ethan, she said finally, her voice calm but distant. I was not expecting you. I was not expecting to find you here either, he admitted, his voice low. The caf feels different without you. She smiled faintly. It was never mine to keep. It was always yours, he said, taking a slow breath. I just did not realize it until you were gone. She looked down, her hands tightening around a sketchbook. You did not come here to talk about walls and tables. No, he said, stepping closer. I came to say I am sorry. I should have stood up for you, for us. Instead, I let fear make me small. The sincerity in his voice cracked something inside her. Do you have any idea what it was like, she said quietly, to watch everything we built turn into a headline? Yes, he said, because I lost more than a reputation. I lost the only person who ever looked at me and saw more than a CEO. She exhaled shakily, torn between anger and longing. Ethan, I do not know if I can go back. I am not asking you to, he said gently. I just want to help you build what is yours now. This studio, it is beautiful. Let me invest, no strings attached. She shook her head. I do not need money. I know, he said softly, but maybe you could use a friend. For a moment, the tension softened. She studied his face, the exhaustion behind his smile. You look tired, she murmured. I have not been sleeping much, he admitted. Table 3 feels too quiet. Something in the way he said it made her chest tighten. You really kept going there? Every day, he said simply. It is the only place that still feels honest. Her eyes glistened, and for the first time in weeks, she let herself smile. A small, trembling smile, but real. You are impossible, she said softly. So I have been told, he replied with a hint of a grin. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. There is an event next week, he said. An art showcase at the caf. They wanted to name it The Art of Willow Street. But I thought it should have a different name. The Art of Mia Harper. Would you come? She stared at him, stunned. You are serious? Always, he said. It is time people see where the real art came from. When the door closed behind him, she stood frozen, heart racing. Part of her wanted to run after him, to believe that maybe this time he truly meant it. Outside, the rain fell harder, washing the city clean, as if preparing it for something new. The following Friday evening, Willow Street Café glowed under soft golden lights. A banner above the entrance read, "The Art of Mia Harper." Inside, the familiar aroma of roasted beans and vanilla filled the air, mingling with the quiet hum of conversation. Every wall was lined with her sketches, scenes of ordinary life, captured with extraordinary warmth. There were drawings of customers, coffee cups, and the corner booth where it all began. At the center of the display stood one framed piece, larger than the rest, the same sketch she had made long ago, two figures sitting across from each other at table 3. The crowd admired her work, unaware that each line carried a memory, a confession, a heartbeat. Mia stood near the back, nervous but radiant in a simple navy dress. She had almost not come, too afraid of reopening old wounds. But something in Ethan's voice that night had stayed with her honesty, unguarded and real. Now, as she watched people smile at her art, she realized it had never been about perfection. It had always been about connection. The crowd shifted suddenly, murmuring as Ethan walked in. He was not in his usual corporate armor but dressed simply, blending into the glow of the café. Their eyes met across the room, and for a long moment the noise faded. He approached slowly, hands in his pockets, a soft smile tugging at his lips. "You came," he said quietly. "You made it hard not to," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "You really named it after me?" "It was never mine to name," he said. "I just fixed what should have been right from the start." She looked at the framed sketch and whispered, "It feels like forever ago." "It feels like yesterday," he said, his tone low but full of meaning. For a while they simply stood there, surrounded by the very world they had built together. Then Ethan took a small step closer. "Mia, when I first walked into this café months ago, I thought I was looking for coffee. Turns out I was looking for a reason to slow down. You gave me that. You gave me something real." Her eyes softened. "And you gave me the chance to believe my art mattered." He shook his head gently. "Your art was always powerful. I just helped the world see it." The audience applauded as the host announced her name, inviting her to the front. Mia hesitated, glancing at Ethan. "Go," he whispered. "This is your moment." She stepped forward, the lights catching her hair as she thanked the crowd, her voice steady but emotional. "Art," she said, "is not about perfect lines. It is about the people who remind us we are still human. This café taught me that." When she stepped down, Ethan was waiting with a small envelope. "What is this?" she asked. "Open it." Inside was a sketchbook, her sketchbook, restored, its worn edges carefully taped and bound. On the first page he had written, "For Mia Harper, who turned mistakes into masterpieces." Tears welled in her eyes. "You kept it?" "Always," he said. "And now I want you to have it back. Maybe fill it with new chapters. Maybe one with me in it." Her laugh broke through the tears. "Are you asking me to draw you?" "No," he said, smiling. "I am asking if you would let me be part of the story this time." The crowd around them faded into a blur, and for the first time she did not hesitate. She stepped into his arms, the café around them echoing with applause and warmth. Outside, the city lights shimmered like they were celebrating too. Months later, a new sign appeared above the café window. Café Table 3, a story by Ethan and Mia. And every morning before opening, they would sit together at that same table, sharing one coffee, one dream, and a love that began with the simplest mistake.